Well, we're going to continue with our good friend Moses today in Exodus 3. Exodus 3, verse 11. I was blessed this week to see a clip from a crusade. I'm not really sure where it was, but the preacher, evangelist, whoever it was, gave his invitation, and he said, if you want to receive Jesus, come on. And the place had young people running to the altar. And again, I think that points to the fact that God is moving. Some are saying it's the opening stages of revival, which, okay. But we have to keep in mind who he's focused on this time. And so rejoice, because I tell you what's happening with a lot of young people is they are figuring out that what they've been sold is a bill of goods, and that they are looking for something real. They know postmodernism doesn't work, and they know that trying to get life where they make up their own rules and own truth and morality doesn't work in the real world. But they don't know what works, and so there is a movement now of young people who are coming to Christ, who are taking it seriously. I told you last week, one of the trends, for good or bad, is a lot of them are headed to Orthodoxy. And because in Orthodoxy, there's tradition, there's teaching that hasn't changed for 2,000 years. There's something solid they feel grounded in. And it's not entertainment oriented. It's not, come here, let's have a good time oriented. There's no rock music, no strobe lights, no smoke machines. It's just come and follow God with historical roots. And so for me, the challenge of that is, I don't have anything against Orthodoxy, but I would rather they just kind of stop short of that. Because there is something out there that does offer what they're looking for. The problem is they haven't seen it. What they see is cool church. You come here, we give talks each week, and we're going to give you a talk on how to be happy, how to be successful, how to get what you want out of life, how to make God do what you want him to do. And then we're going to invite you to come to faith in this Jesus who just wants to be your friend. And I don't find that in Scripture anywhere. Jesus never offered anybody the opportunity to follow me so I can be your friend. No, he didn't say follow me so I can meet your therapeutic needs. No. When he said follow me and somebody followed him, it cost them everything. See, that was the terms of discipleship. In fact, Jesus lays it out pretty clear later when he says, if anyone wants to come after me, anyone, not certain people, anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself. That's where we lose most folks right there. Deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Well, that don't sound much like modern day church. So there's a reason why God is moving among the young, but they're bypassing the church that they know to go into a tradition they don't know, because they look at what they know and say there's nothing to it. And sadly, a lot of adults aren't willing to be that honest. So what I want to touch on today is a jumping off of that is this. Now that they're coming to Christ, what now? Who's gonna disciple them? Because it's great they're coming to Jesus, going to heaven and all that, but then what? You see, it's not enough. It's kind of like the abortion thing. You have people who are anti-abortion and you have people who are pro-life. What's the difference? An anti-abortion person would just say, outlaw abortion. Okay, so a lot of Planned Parenthood places are closing. I think 5 or 6 or 7 close this week. Okay, so anti-abortion and pro-life would say, yes, that's a good thing. Anti-abortion people then would come along and say, if some young lady came up pregnant, had nowhere to go, folks kicked her out, and and all the other typical scenarios that go on, their response to that will, stinks to be you. A pro-life person would say, well, let me see if I can get you some help. Let's see if we can find a way to get somebody to come along and help you till you can get on your feet. You see the difference? And that's the difference here. If all we do is get them saved for heaven, then we're not taking care of them once they get born again. And you know what's going to happen? Jesus wasn't kidding when he said there's only 4 souls. One doesn't receive it at all. So now you're down to 3. And of the 3, 2 start out, they receive the word, but for different reasons fall away. So of the 4, 1 makes it. Now what happened to one of the ones that fell away? They fell away because they received the word with gladness. There was excitement. There was all types of anticipation and expectation of what this new life would be. But no one ever helped them get their roots going down. Instead of roots going down, their roots went out. And I hope you understand the difference when a plant, or trees are bad about this. When you have trees, there are trees that are more prone to being laid over when storms come through than others. And usually the difference is the root. When you have a tree that's roots tend to grow out instead of down, it doesn't take much for the wind to blow them over. When they have that tap root that goes down, it takes something to blow them over. And so when we have people who come to Christ like these young people are doing, my great concern is, all right, who's going to work with them now? Because if somebody doesn't step up to work with these young people, chances are they're not going to be the one that makes it. Chances are, in this pagan world that we live in, if something or someone doesn't come along and help them get rooted in the faith, they're going to get drawn away by something else. And it's sad to see. It's sad to see. We see it all the time. Like when some athlete, pro athlete or entertainer gets saved and, oh man, Jesus is what I've always been looking for. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And you watch them say, yes, finally we got one. Yes, great. But no one ever works with them. And before long, they fall away. And they're over there touting Buddhism or something. And you say, what? Buddhism? Where'd that come from? Does that make sense? Okay. Well, so what I hope will happen is that someone's going to step up with these young people and help root them in the faith. And so today what I want to do is, using Moses, we're going to talk a little bit about what God has done to enable there to be people who can help these people. Okay? So I know you're looking at me like, what in the world is he talking about? Well, if I were to title this something, it would be What's in Us is Coming Out. Now, when I say that, chances are you may think in negative terms. Like, so-and-so loses his temper. Well, I always knew that was in him. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what God has deposited in us has a way of seeping out. And we may not even realize it. Okay, verse 11 of Exodus 3. Now, this is when God has told Moses, all right, Moses, it's time. It's time for you to go deliver the people, my people. And remember, we've said if this had happened 40 years earlier, Moses would have said, well, it's about time. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell people what they're going to do. And I'm going to command me an army and we're going to... But now 40 years have passed. And God always works on those two tracks. You know, a railroad system needs two tracks to work, right? If you only have one, what happens? Train falls off. God, two tracks he's working on. One is training. The other is character formation. So in Moses, we see these clearly because the first 40 years of Moses' life was training. He learned how to be a leader. He learned how to command people. He learned about military movements. He learned all this stuff, how to administrate government, how to administrate legal cases. He learned all that stuff living in Pharaoh's house. But what he didn't learn was character. In fact, if anything, what he learned in the way of character in Pharaoh's house worked against him, made him unusable. God. No matter how good we are in our talent and our skills, in organizational psychology, they call that KSAs, knowledge, skills, abilities. No matter how good we are in our KSAs, if our character's off, God still can't use us. So he's got, you know, the incident that caused him to graduate from tech school to life school. That was killing the Egyptian. Now, you know, we've speculated as to why he did that. We really don't know. So your guess is as good as mine, and chances are we're either both right, both wrong. I don't know. But I want to throw out a possibility today, okay? And we have to think in terms of the fact Moses did not have the Bible. So he doesn't know how this story turns out, okay? So Moses, all he has is oral tradition and whatever his mother invested in him those first probably 3 to 5 years she was able to be his nanny. Beyond that, he had no knowledge of God. The only thing he knew about God was Egyptian gods. He knew them by name. He'd probably even worshiped some of them. His understanding of gods they were limited in power and by geography. So there were gods who could be gods in Egypt, but they could not be gods in Canaan. There were gods that could be gods in Egypt, but not gods in the wilderness, in the desert. And so there's gods for this part of nature, there's gods for that part of nature. And no one God could control it all. So his understanding of God was very limited. And that's why we said when he goes into this 40-year period of character formation, God doesn't say anything to him for 40 years that we know of. It's just 40 years of a Midian experience where God has to press all of Egypt out of him. You ever been through something like that where God takes you into a period of time and maybe it's something you've been really proud of about your past, something you've accomplished, something you've achieved, and say, wow, this is really something. This really makes me something. And then you go into this season where God just starts mashing it out. That's what he was in. God was mashing it out. And it was painful. And it was despairing. And it was a situation where it worked so much in humility into Moses' life that it wiped out all of his self-confidence. So here's the man who had commanded an army who was accustomed to telling servants what to do. And now he spends 40 years of his life telling sheep what to do. And sheep are stubborn, and they don't always do what you want them to do. You know why? It's not because they're stubborn in the sense of hard-headed. They're stubborn because they're stupid. And they'll just wander off cliffs and wander into a den of wolves or whatever. So that's why shepherds have to really watch sheep, because they are prone to wander off and get hurt and everything else. And they won't defend themselves. And so you've got the shepherd, he has to constantly be watching these sheep to make sure he's got them all together. So we have Moses there in this experience, and life's going on, and as far as he's concerned, this will probably be his life from then on. He saw no future. He was just going to always be a nomadic shepherd, living in the middle of nowhere in a tent. And then the day comes, he sees the burning bush. And he goes to see what's going on, and when he walks up to it, a voice comes out of the bush and calls his name. Moses, Moses. And that's the first time anybody had called his name that was an immediate family for 40 years. He was totally forgotten. And he knew it. And that's when Moses is introduced to God. And that's where God tells Moses, okay, Moses, it's time to deliver my people. So verse 11, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And isn't that interesting? Who am I? Now, 40 years ago, I'd have told you I'm the right guy. Back when I used to wear my red cap, said, make Egypt great again. And I had a little strut about me. I don't have a strut anymore. So why are you talking to me? Nobody knows who I am. Nobody even cares. And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. Now there's a lot of debate over what all that means, because it's hard to interpret. Basically what it means is, I am the self-existing one. Meaning, I don't need anybody. I don't need nothing to exist. I'm not changing. I changed not. I am the self-existing one. Which means he's all powerful. Which means he can do with humanity whatever he wants, whether people like it or not. He can do with human history whatever he wants, whether people like it or not. This is what you say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord God of fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed towards this people, and so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. Now, God has given Moses a pretty big promise here. The I am the self-existing one, the ones who controls all things, has said, Moses, go. This is what I want you to do. This is what the opponent's going to say. And then this is what I'm going to do in response to what he says. And so basically what's going to happen is all of the plagues that come on Egypt were plagues aimed at an Egyptian god. And when the plague would happen and they would appeal to that god to do something, he couldn't, because he wasn't real. And that's why the last plague, the death of the firstborn, was an attack on Pharaoh himself, because he was believed to be the son of Ra. And he was believed to be the controller of life, that he could give life or take it away. And he couldn't spare his own son. And so when Israel's going to leave, they're going to leave with the plunder, as God just said, but they're also going to leave a nation that has had its worldview totally decimated. Well, so where are we going with this today? Skip up here just a second. I want to focus on one thing today from this text. And that is, when God is doing all this encountering with Moses in front of the burning bush, what is he telling him? What he's doing is God is finally commissioning what's been in Moses all along. So here's the scenario I'd like to throw out on what might have been going on when he killed the Egyptian. Remember, Moses is raised in Pharaoh's house. He's raised like an Egyptian. He was raised with the Egyptian worldview. So why would he kill one of them? To save a Jew, because they believed the Egyptians had a prejudice against Jews, and they believed the Jews were their property to do with as they please. And so Moses goes against his own people, they thought, to help a Jew who they believe was property to begin with. What happened? Moses didn't have the Bible, so he didn't get to flip over to Genesis and say, well, let's see, what am I supposed to do? I think that gifting and that calling that were already in Moses seeped out. I imagine if you could talk to Moses after it was over with and said, Moses, why'd you do that? He'd probably say, I don't know. Just something in me took over. Something in me just rose up and took over. Yeah, that calling, that gifting that's in you, that calling to be a leader matched his gifting of leadership. The only missing part of the equation was it wasn't time. And so sometimes people can act according to how God has gifted them, and they may even be able to act in some area of calling for that gifting to function, but they do it prematurely. And it doesn't work. And they fail. And like Moses, they may have a very difficult time overcoming that failure when it is time for that gifting to become a reality. Does that make sense? Okay, that's called self-initiation. And that's what happens when we get impatient. And we've been praying and believing, and God says, well, I've gifted you this way. I've got this divine assignment for you to use that gifting, but not now. And if it doesn't happen in the next day or so, we get impatient and say, well, I guess I'm going to have to help God out. And like Abraham, you get Ishmael. And the sad part about this is God doesn't wipe out Ishmael when we finally repent. No, we still have to deal with Ishmael. And we're still dealing with Ishmael today. Because Abraham got impatient. So the point is, God has gifted all of us, okay? We call that a birthday gift. When you were born again, God gave you at least one spiritual gift. Now, why did he give you a spiritual gift? He gave you the spiritual gift to provide you a way of ministering to the body of Christ that is going to not only be easy for you to do, it's going to be the most productive thing you can do. You see, when you start operating in your gift, it's kind of like practice. And the more you practice it, the better it comes, the better it flows. But the more you operate in your gift, the more fruitful and productive you become. Get out of your gift, and it's just labor, 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 and nothing to show for it. Remember Paul, when God told Paul, Paul, you're going to be a missionary for me to the Gentiles. Paul said, I like the missionary part, but I don't like the Gentile part. So I'm going to the Jews. And so he goes to the Jews. It doesn't work out very well. And finally, he comes to the place of saying, I think I'm going to do it God's way. And he starts going to the Gentiles, and it gets easier for him. Not that he doesn't have persecution, he does. But when he figures out how hungry they are and how to minister to them, how to present the gospel to them, he's got churches popping up all over the place because he got into his gifting. And so God has gifted all of us in some way. Now you may say, well, I don't know about all that. I want to tell you why we don't know about it. Okay, let's just go on and kill that fatty cat. The church, the early church, was a body. And in that body, the members used their gifts. Okay, so if you read, as we will in a moment, 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, Ephesians 4, you find 3 listings of gifts. Now, we're not going to worry with Ephesians 4 today because that's dealing with leadership gifts in the church, equipping gifts. And Paul says these gifts are for the equipping of the saints so they can go out and do the work of the ministry. Okay, so we're going to set those aside. These others apply across the board. But here's the thing. The early church knew this, and they functioned as a body. The medieval church became an organization. And they created a dichotomy between clergy and laity. That looks like this. If you're not a member of the clergy, you're not professional. You have no business dabbling in ministry. That means you're by default a member of the laity. So, as a member of the laity, you can't really correctly fathom spiritual things. You need a clergy person. So what did that create? Corruption to the highest degree. Because it produced a dependence between members and, in that case, would have been priests. So that the members thought, well, we're not really worthy to go before God for ourselves. We need somebody who's a little closer to God. The priest. And the priest became the go-between, or what they call the vicar. And so when somebody needed something from God, or they needed some type of word from God, or maybe felt they needed to repent of something, they couldn't go to God for themselves because of this. God only listened to the clergy. So if you needed anything, you had to go through the priest. It's still around. That thinking is still around. It's very common today to find people who will got up this morning, got ready, went to church, and they're thinking like this. And so when they go home today, spiritual things are basically over, unless they get in a jam. Now, if they get in a jam this week, they're going to get spiritual quick. And what are they going to do? They're going to find somebody they feel like is more spiritual than they are to intervene. I had this one day. I couldn't believe it. I heard it. But someone came to me and they said, I need you to pray for me. Well, I knew the story, and that person was right. They needed some prayer. I need you to pray for me. I said, really? She said, yeah, you're a preacher. God will listen to you. That was that. Now, you may say, well, what does that hurt? I tell you what that hurts. If you think like this, you're going to fit into that mold of we're just kind of here to be good people, be good citizens, live the American dream, get all you can all you get, sit on the can. And, we're just here to enjoy life and try to be good, go to church, pay our dues, show God we're serious about Him, show reverence and respect and all this kind of stuff. But basically, what Jesus said about being salt and light, that's just for these people. What the New Testament tells us about the church being a body, and that each member of the body contributes to that body from whatever gifting they have. No, we just need the right preacher, cool, hip, whatever their tastes are. And as long as we got that right, that's all that matters. And so what that does is it creates and fuels this dualistic Christianity that's prominent today that says, as long as you go to church on Sunday and do spiritual things, how you live doesn't matter. Except for clergy. Now they got to toe the line. Over here, So what God is doing now is He's restoring the body aspect of church. And we're going back to members and gifts. Does that make sense? That's what this point in history needs, is people who recognize how God has gifted them, using that gift for His glory. Okay? So what are the gifts? Well, I'm just going to go through these quickly. And hope that if you don't know how you're gifted, that you will. You'll find out. All right, 1 Corinthians 12, verses 4 through 11 says there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different ministries, but the same Lord. There are different ways of working, but the same God who works all things in all people. To each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. And so then he breaks it down. He says, to one is given the spirit of the message of wisdom. Let me change markers. All right, for one, it's wisdom. So we call that the word of wisdom or the gift of wisdom. People with the gift of wisdom have an uncanny ability for understanding life or understanding why things are going a certain way. They're the why people. They can explain the whys of life to you. To another, the gift of knowledge. Now, the gift of knowledge people are the how people, or the what people. How does this work? What should we do? They get a word of knowledge as part of that. I always tell my counseling students, pray to God to give you the gift of knowledge so that you can know what's really going on when you meet with a client and not just have to rely on what they tell you. Okay? So, word of knowledge, another gift of faith. People with the gift of faith have no problem with believing God for anything. And they usually see it happen. Gifts of healing. Notice this is plural. So for some, it may be the Benny Hinn type stuff. But another gift of healing is what paladin and medical science do. That's an expression of the gift of healing. All right? To another, gift of miracles. To another, prophecy. To another, discernment. To another, speaking in tongues. To another, the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit who apportions them, assigns them to each one as He determines. So whatever gift you've been, or more, at least one, could be more, whatever gift you've been entrusted with, the Holy Spirit did it because He decided that's what you need. Now, a lot of times, your gifting will be tied to your calling. Okay, so that's a very common thing. All right, the next list, Romans 12:6. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If one has the gift, whose gift is prophecy, which I've already put up there, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it is serving, we didn't put that one. Okay? There are people who love to serve. I mean, if you ask for volunteers to clean the bathrooms, their hand goes up. And it won't be them in there going rah, 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 when they're doing it. Somebody that does a lot of rah, 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 they don't have the gift of serving. If teaching, let him teach. Okay. If encouraging, let him encourage. Some translations use the word exhortation. If giving, do so generously. If leading, lead with diligence. And if it's showing mercy, do it cheerfully. Now, why do you think mercy needs to be done cheerfully? Let's talk about that a minute. Why do you think mercy needs to be done cheerfully? Well, what is the gift of mercy? Y'all wake up now. Don't go to sleep on me. What's the gift of mercy? Gift of mercy is somebody who can enter into the sufferings of another without any effort. They get close to somebody, unlike how we may normally, and that's kind of avoid people who are suffering, they're attracted to them. They're like a magnet. And when they get there, they enter into their suffering so easily. They can just feel it. It's called empathy. They can just feel what they're feeling. They can feel the pain. They can take the pain on themselves. They just start looking for ways to try to encourage this person to make it better. Why do you think it's important that be done cheerfully? Well, tell me which is better. If I go to Linda and see she's suffering and I have the gift of mercy and I come to, oh, Linda, I see you're suffering. Oh, I see that you've been struggling this week. Man, it just makes me want to cry. I just can't stand it. Am I helping? But if I can go to Linda and say, Linda, I see you're suffering. Man, I can just feel it. I can see that you've suffered every day this week. But I got something for you. God sees it too. And God's got something for you. And I can quote a promise to her. That's cheerfully. Cheerfully is not, cheerfully is hopefully. Yeah, mercy should give hope to whoever you're showing mercy to. Leading, that was Moses. Now, Moses didn't know nothing about spiritual gifts. But Moses carried leadership inside of him. He had been gifted by God to be a leader. He was 80 years old before he figured that out. And see, what I'm encouraging all of us with today is this. Everyone in here has been gifted in some kind of way. Do you know what it is? If you know what it is, are you using it? If you don't know what it is, find out. Well, I don't recommend them, but there are these things called spiritual gifts tests that are out there. I don't really recommend those. I've taken them, and that's why I don't recommend them. But I'm going to tell you a better way. God, show me what my gifts are. Show me. I want to operate in the gift, because when you get in the operating in your gift, it's like pouring oil on the cogs of a machine. It just runs smooth. It's like a finely tuned motor. It just sits there and hums because everything's working the way it should. Now, when you get out of your gift and try to act in someone else's gift, it's when that motor makes a lot of racket or breaks down completely. So what you want to do is, God, show me what is my gifting. And then the next thing you can do is get with people you trust and say, I believe my gifting is this. Do you agree? Okay? Now, I'll give you why that's important. We can easily convince ourselves of things that aren't true. Remember that self-talk we've talked about always talks in God's voice. Gets deep and sounds British. And we can tell ourselves all kinds of things, and then you can go to somebody and say, hey, I tell you what, I can't speak to anybody. I'm so introverted, I can't stand in front of a crowd. I just want to stay home, hide in the closet. But I think God's called me to be an evangelist. Then you can say, well, I don't see that. God's called you for something, but I really don't see that right now. So what the part you don't know is I said that because I saw some person on television that was an evangelist, and they had all kinds of success, and they were so happy and everything, and I want to be like that. So asking people you trust, do you think I'm gifted in this area? Another way of knowing is, what are you good at? You know, some people or what comes easy for you. For example, somebody who may be, it's not one of these up here, but it's still a gift. He may be called to be an intercessor. Okay? And for them, I mean, if you tell some people, we're going to pray for 15 minutes a day, they'll just about faint on you. 15 minutes? Good gracious. For an intercessor, they would say, is that all? Because when they start praying, they get in alignment with what God created them to do and gifted them to do, and it gets easy. But when we're not in alignment with what God gave us to do, life's hard. The faith is hard. It doesn't produce any fulfillment. It doesn't produce joy. It's just like every day is a chore. You see, I am the most alive when I'm teaching, because that's what I was gifted to do. I've done it all my life. I did it when I was a boy, didn't even know what I was doing. But because it was in me, it kept seeping out. And so when I got my first job in the 8th grade at the Dothan Progress, I started up there with a couple of guys, and we were the guys who picked up these stacks of paper. Once they used to put them together by hand. And we would take them and tie them up, and then we'd send them out of chute to the carriers. Well, when I started there in 8th grade, I kept noticing all these other guys just kind of showed up when they wanted to. I was there every week. We worked every Tuesday afternoon, sometimes late in the night. And when I got in the 9th grade, the boss called me in one day. He said, "I've been watching you." I thought, uh-oh. He said, I've watched you every time we hire somebody new. You train him in how to do this job. I said, "I can't help it. That's just who I am." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what. Now, I'm in 9th grade. I'm promoting you to supervisor. And you're going to supervise all these boys you're in school with over there. You hire who you want to. You fire who you want to. And whatever you do, I'll back you up." And so in the 9th grade, because that gift kept seeping out, I became management. Now, I know that sounds like a silly thing probably to you. But what I'm telling you is, chances are, if you look back over your life, if you do know how God's gifted you, there's been times that gift has been seeping out. And if you think back, those times it seeped out is when you were most alive. And when you're not doing it, it's when you're the most miserable. So I want to wrap this up today with this. For Moses, this encounter with God is God's recognition of what he put within Moses that Moses didn't know was there. Moses, you're a leader. I've called you to lead my people out of Egypt. Your gift is going to line up with your calling. And that's your calling. Now, Moses, as we see and will see, didn't believe it, because he had been so crushed, so beat up by life. He felt disqualified. I got nothing to offer, God. You got the wrong guy. God said, "No, Moses, I got the right guy, because you've been through the process, so you're ready." And even when Moses said, "Well, who am I even going to tell him sending me?" And God says, "I am. That's my name. I am the self-existing one. I am the all-powerful, the all-sovereign. I am everything you need. I've got it all. I'm all of that. And I'm guaranteeing you success." Even then, Moses wasn't convinced, because he'd been so mashed down by life. And so God, as part of his calling, is going to have to build his confidence so that he'll act and do what God created him to do. So I close with, God's created you for this point in history. That's why you're here. God has invested gifts into your life for this point in history. That's why you're still here. That gift is needed by somebody. Don't be like the foolish person who was given the one coin to invest, the one talent to invest. They had the easiest job of all. They didn't have 5. They didn't have 3. They had 1. And they didn't. I'll be honest, and I'm shutting up. I've only heard one thing in my life that Joel Osteen said I agreed with. Now, I hadn't heard everything he said. I'm just saying of what I've heard. And that is this. He said the saddest place in the world you can ever visit is a graveyard. Because what you'll see is not bodies, but you'll see all the dreams that were never fulfilled. All the callings never fulfilled. All the gifts that had been entrusted to them that were never invested anywhere. I don't want that to be me. So that's why I harass you every week with teaching. You know, as best I can, I'm going to always tell you the truth. Now, if I don't know the truth, then I may tell you something someday that's not true. I'm sorry about that. But as best I can, I'm going to tell you the truth. You know why? Because one day I have to stand before God too. And I don't want to be one of the slick preachers who stand before God and say, God, look at this massive mega church I built for you. But let's talk about your sermons. Oh, no, let's don't talk about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. How many disciples did you make? You know, that just wasn't our thing, God. You know, we were just about bringing them in. What did I say to do? Build big works and let everybody be impressed by what we do. No. What did I say to do? I don't want to be one of them that has to lower my head and say, I messed up. I want to be one who stands before God, and if I never have more than 50 people in a congregation, at least I can hold my head up and say, I said what you said to say. And God will say, well done. Because God doesn't say well done to everybody. As our good friend Peter Parrish used to say, if you haven't done well, who are you that God should lie? I want to be one of those that God can say well done to. And so you know what that means I've got to do? I've got to invest that gift. So Lord, help us today to go out of here, and if somebody doesn't know what their gift is, I pray this week, Father, you'll show them. And not only show them, but you'll give them the opportunity to begin to use it, to begin to invest it, so that not only will the kingdom be enriched, but their life will be enriched. And Lord, help us to see that you have put everything into place for us to experience the quality of life you promised. So Lord, help us to see this is part of it. And I pray, Lord, your blessing on each person here today and on each family here today. May they prosper and be in health as their souls prosper. Amen. Well, blessings. Have a great week. We will see you next Sunday.